Hey guys, good evening, good afternoon, depending upon your time zone. It is Tuesday, July 9th, and welcome to the start of, I guess, year two of Point to Thumb Journey. To those of you that are familiar with this date, this is exactly 1 year ago today that I started the journey to walk across the country and see you know, what humanity had in store for me. And It's a pretty emotional day, and definitely wanted to get with you guys with a video. I actually took some notes from some people that asked some questions. I figured I'd spend today answering that. I wish I was kind of in better spirits. Most of you know by now, if you follow me, that I kind of wear my emotions on my sleeve, and some of the even impetus for me taking the journey in the first place, you know, seems to keep raising its ugly head a little bit, and some of that happened today. So if I'm not I shouldn't say my usual chipper self, because I don't know if I am chipper usually, but anyway, uh, that's where we're at. So I wanted to get with y'all, and some folks had sent me some questions over the last couple of months since I've been back, and I figured I would just spend today answering those for you. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is what was my favorite town, and it's funny because just like for me, everything in life is about the people. As I said before, my best vacations wasn't about the place, but about the people that I was with, and a lot of that translates to the journey. It's hard to say what my favorite was because there were several that were really integral for different reasons, and enjoyable for different reasons. But one of them is one of the probably the smallest town on the list. Well, yeah, probably the smallest town on the list would be Hobart, Indiana. Um, I met some great folks there, friends for life, and then the town and community actually extended themselves to me at a festival they had one day, and it was just a really great opportunity, and they really welcomed me and just took care of me. So Hobart, Indiana is definitely up there. But the second one, also on a smaller town scale, is Cuba, Missouri. And maybe I should say some of the names of the folks that were so integral. I mean, there's so many people to shout out to. But in Hobart, there was Jim Newmeister and Papa Joe Collins, and then the Park and Recreation Department of Hobart. In particular, there was Pastor Leah and her husband Matt in Hobart, Papa Joe's wife Cindy, Jim's dog Misha. We spent some time together. She wasn't that fond of me, but Hobart was definitely one. Then Cuba, Missouri was definitely up there for a couple of reasons. As much as it was the people, Anna Lee and Chris and Sierra, who was dear to my heart. It's Anna Lee's granddaughter. Leanne and her family, Jimmy West, and how he extended himself to me. Shane, who kind of just took me around town and showed me the town. But Cuba was probably the most significant town along my journey for a few reasons. One is the people were exceptionally amazing to me. Um, the town itself, though, there were two towns I want to talk about that, if the people were the rudest people in the world, the town itself would have been spectacular. And Cuba was one of them. They call it, I think, the mural capital of the world, maybe, or of the country, or something like that. But they have so many giant murals on the sides of buildings. It's a must-see if you're on Route 66. But more importantly, a very integral person was Anna Lee. And I'm terrible with last names when you see them on Facebook, because I don't know what's a maiden name and a married name. I don't know if it's Grayson or Williams. Hopefully, Anna Lee can text me and tell me. But through Cuba and Anna Lee's buying into my message and the journey, and I'm not sure if she was tipped off by Tracy and Joe, or she tipped them off, if Anna Lee tipped them off, but essentially I was taken care of for 4 or 5 days later in the journey through, let's essentially say, networking through the thanks of those folks who looked out for me. So a very, very special town, and I probably got to speed it up because I have a bunch of questions to answer. The most emotional day by far that I shared on the journey was with a gentleman I hadn't met prior to it. He came to be known to me through somebody I never even met that just started following me online. But Gary Gartrell took me to Chicago and showed me a couple of places in Chicago, Casa of Cook County and the Honor Flight group. And the emotions that day just ran so high. And to finish the day, he dropped me off in a town called Woodstock, Illinois. And much like Cuba, if the people of Woodstock were rude, which they were far from, the town is so, I can't explain it. If you want to know, if you watched the movie Groundhog Day, Woodstock was the town square that they filmed, look at some bug crawling me, that they filmed it in. So Gary Gartrell in Chicago, and Honor Flight and Casa, and then going up to Woodstock, and the people at the Public House restaurant, and how they welcomed me, and some of the folks, just memorable beyond belief. And then one of the neatest towns was, not because of the town, because I'm not a big fan of it, the city, but the people in and around Phoenix and Scottsdale. Bob and Sue Roan, who came to know of me through that same person who turned me into Gary Gartrell, her sister Doris Whitler. So shout out to Doris from Ohio. But Bob and Sue Roan, and then before I get to Susan, there was a gentleman. Oh God, why is his name escaping me for the moment? I apologize to him. We met at Oregano's. He found out about me through a great story you'll read about in the book. But anyway, and then there was Susan Weedman, who believed in the journey so much. She actually had 2 get-togethers for me to kind of just talk to folks. One night she had a group of her friends over, and she got some pizzas, and we just sat and talked, and I got to share my story with them, which was wonderful. She got me a pair of my shoes, as did Jimmy West in Cuba, Missouri, or Anna Lee in Cuba. And then the second night, she had her family, immediate and extended, come, and we sat and talked again. So such a special shout out to her. She also volunteered to take me up to the Grand Canyon, but also to, I think it's called the Pioneers Memorial, where the 19 firefighters in Arizona are laid to rest. And really, that was an emotional day for sure as well. So those are some of the towns that really inspired me or meant the world to me. A couple of people said, what was the biggest surprise on the journey? I've talked about it many times in the past, but the biggest one, I think, was, and I never anticipated this, was the male-to-male bonding. I really thought that I might appeal to some young moms and some older folks, but I didn't realize, I'll tell you what, a lot of the bonding was done with just other men, and I didn't anticipate that. You know, men are typically rough and tough and alpha and don't show emotion, and they were far from that. And it wasn't just any particular age range. I bonded with 19-year-olds and 30-year-olds and 70-year-olds and 50-year-olds. It was just really crazy to explain in words, but that was something that was special. The other thing to take away for me was how unbelievably cold and wet Arizona was. In my mind, I got out there that the desert was going to be hot and sweaty, and Phoenix was when I was down there. But Arizona, going along Route 66 there, up through Flagstaff and Joseph City and Winslow and Kingman and all that cold, I couldn't believe it. I was probably out there in early to mid-October, and it was pretty. It was chilly, so that was one of them. Somebody asked me, well, I get this a lot from the guys, so I'll just put it out there. A lot of guys asked me if there was any, how do I say, romantic interludes that took place. And I can honestly say this, that I can't even think of a moment where there was even some tension, which you know, maybe part of me is embarrassed to say that's the case, but there really wasn't. It was a lot of walking, and you know, when I got to, like I said, it was a lot of male bonding, believe it or not, or you know, couples or families that took me in. So I can honestly say, now I had, you know, my relationship back home that I saw a couple of times on the journey, but there was never really, and I wish I could tell you what a great story it would have been if the Hawaiian Tropic, you know, tour bus would have pulled up next to me, and you know, a bunch of women wanted to put suntan lotion all over me, but it just didn't happen. So there really wasn't even a moment where I can tell you that there was even some kind of tension, which is not really, great storytelling or anything like that, but I'm just trying to be honest with y'all. So some other folks asked me what my biggest what my biggest takeaway was. What one thing surprised me the most on the journey, and I'll tell you what it is. It is pretty clear to me. Was the proliferance, is that a word, proliferance, of drugs. And I don't mean that they were offered to me. I don't mean I was hanging out with drug addicts, but I walked along a major highway for many, 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 many miles, and I cannot tell you the number of hypodermic needles I saw strewn about our country. And I wasn't on some back alley in some shady big city. I was on country roads and a main road, and in talking to people, hearing stories about it, really surprising. A story in Albuquerque, New Mexico, where there was literally a security guard at the McDonald's, and they said, "How rough does it get around here at McDonald's?" And the security guard, and they explained they were between two kind of cheap motels, and people would go there to buy their drugs and shoot up, and they would come into the McDonald's and go into the bathroom and shoot up and overdose, and so they needed security there, which was so the drug epidemic, pandemic, whatever you want, proliferance, if that's what I'm looking for, was really surprising for me from that standpoint. I've gotten this since I've been home a lot. People have asked me, what's been the biggest, challenge, I guess, since I've returned home. The family and I picked up. We didn't really miss a beat. The thing I think that I appreciate more now than ever, especially when you're trying to write a book, you think that we have a lot of time in the day, a lot of idle time. At least I always thought we did. In my mind, I'm always trying to be on the go doing something. I hate just sitting around doing nothing. I'm pretty hyper. And I thought we had a lot of idle time, but I have a really full appreciation for folks and the everyday life. Since I've been back, when you're walking and that's all you got, that's your job, and for the whole day, there's not a lot to do. But when you come back and you work a full-time job, and you come home and you cook for the family, and you spend some time with the kids, and you mow a lawn or two, and you take care of the car, and you run to go get grocery shopping, and you come home, there really isn't a lot of downtime. And it really makes me appreciate those folks that seem to accomplish so much more, because in my mind I was going to come back and bang this book out. Literally, I swear to you, I had a conference call and I thought I'd have it done in 2 weeks. I'm a year into it. I'm still not done with the book. And I sit down and write for 2 or 3 hours when I do sit down, and I get one day covered. I mean, you think about that, and it's not because I'm a terrible writer and I don't know how to type. It's because there's just a lot of content, and I really have an appreciation how short life is and how much time, we all spend. Not one group, but we all. And a day goes by pretty quickly. I don't sleep a lot of hours, but you work and you come home and you're on the go, and like I said, you cook a meal, you sit down with the family, you mow a lawn, go to a movie, whatever. Bam, the day's gone already, and you think, well, tomorrow I'm going to do all of these things and have all this time, and then the same thing repeats itself. And guys, we just don't have that much time. Really, cherish it and enjoy it. So that was my biggest observation, I guess, when I got back, is before I left, I thought I had nothing but time on my hands, and the world spends their days wasting time away. I really had this impression that, the American society in particular spends a lot of time wasted, and I don't think that's the case anymore at all. And I think the pressure of writing the book has exacerbated that in my mind, because, it's like every day I want to get to it, and then where'd the time go? And then lastly, as I wrap up, I get this a lot, especially from the young kids. Would I do it again? And my initial answer was no. There's no way I would do it again. But as the months have gone on, I think, honestly, while I wouldn't do it again for the same reason, I think it would be a really neat kind of story if 20 years from now I got the bug and did either something similar or retrace my steps. In fact, I think it'd be a great television show, just to walk into some small town and just meet the people. The people are the folks that have the stories. You guys out there are the ones that made it possible and have the stories. So, I wouldn't say I want to do it again, but, who knows when the urge hits me, and who knows what happens in the future. Gotta run, guys. It's 1 year anniversary. Thanks for being there with me. Happy 1 year. I love you guys, and keep pointing the thumb.